Dear colleagues and students from around the globe, it is my great pleasure to open the second edition of the Spring Talks. The event consists of daily online sessions and it aims at promoting the École original interdisciplinary research-based style of pedagogy and training. Along those 4 weeks, we will hold some 20 online events that will enable you to directly engage with more than 40 of our professors from all backgrounds, both geographic and disciplinary. This year, we will also set up roundtables dedicated to the presentation of books and journals supervised by our publishing house. All sessions will start at 3 Paris time and will later be made available on our YouTube channel. Today, Nathalie Clayer and Sabine Rutar will open our talks, and before I leave them the floor, let me remind you that you are most welcome to ask questions and make your comments at the end of Nathalie's presentation, either in the chat box or directly by means of your microphone. Thank you for joining us, and I will leave the floor now to Nathalie and Sabine. Have a good moment.
Thank you very much. Here it's a wonderful Paris afternoon, and I'd like to start with very briefly introducing myself. My name is Sabine Rutar. I'm a professeur invité here at the EHESS. That's a guest professor for a month. And if I'm not here, I work at the Leibniz Institute for East and Southeast European Studies in Regensburg in Germany. So it's my great pleasure to be moderating this first session of this year's Spring Talks at the EHESS, and in particular because the speaker today is Nathalie Clayer, who's Directrice d'études at EHESS, and I'm not going to try to translate that into English, a research director, but this function doesn't exist in English, I guess. She's professor of social and political history with a focus on the relationship between nation and religion in Southeastern Europe at the end of the Age of Empires, not only. Introducing her is not easy because one could go on forever, and it's maybe enough to just say that it's very hard to kind of pass Nathalie if you're studying the Balkans, if you're studying the Ottoman Empire, if you're studying Albania, Turkey, so you come across her works. She's an expert on religious pluralism, interrelation between religions, nationalism, state-building processes, networks, transfer and mobility, and lately she has been focusing a lot, and we'll hear about that today, on spaces of experiences, temporalities, and has also done some work with a biographical approach, which I find very interesting. She presently works on a history of the bitumen mine in Selenica in southern Albania between 1800 and 1945. So it's a longue durée study. It's part of a larger research group, which studies this mine's trajectory since antiquity, as a matter of fact. And this is what we're going to hear details about today. But before I give her the floor, I would like to present you with a book that literally has been published today, and I've been honored to receive an early copy, so I can hold it into the camera, but I've been instructed that you can't really see it. Its title is Une histoire en travelling de l'Albanie 1920-1939. That's my French. Avec, au-delà et en deçà de l'État. So, a history of interwar Albania, looking at the state from various angles with a camera that moves with a steady hand, always keeping focus, but zooming in or out according to what the subject at hand demands in order for it to be narrated comprehensively. So it's a book about state building, but at the same time challenging this very nation state-centered analytical framework that has characterized many previous works, understanding the nation state as a process of constructing and remodeling over time with a focus on the transformation of social spaces, applying her camera technique in a quite congenial manner as I find. So I really recommend this book. It deserves readers well beyond the Southeast European space it analyzes. And this is, I think, enough for now. I recommend this book, and the floor is yours, and I'm looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabine, for these very kind words introducing this first seance of the spring talks of the EHESS. Well, I am also very honored to be the first one this year. And so, yes, today, according to the principle of these spring talks of this EHESS, I want to both to introduce you the theme that Sabine just mentioned. So my research theme that I'm developing at present, but also in a way the manner with which I am and we are presenting things in the framework of seminars at the EHESS. So my seminar is dedicated to post-Ottoman societies, so Ottoman and post-Ottoman societies, but also, let's say, Southeastern societies. The emphasis being put on space, as Sabine has already mentioned, and space in relation to experience. So the experience being, so for example, a lived experience, representation, or an experience in terms of social spaces. So in a way, when I'm speaking about the experience or the space of experience first, so because the title of the seminar is a kind of game with of play with these two terms, experience and space, because it's so the space of experiences and the experience of spaces. So the experience of spaces, one can think about Koselleck, but in the case of Reinhard Koselleck, maybe it was more, not maybe, it's sure it was more related to time. Here, in a way, I'm applying the tool of Koselleck, but changing it a little bit and applying it to the notion of space. Then to think about this interplay between the experience of space and the space of experience, and eventually the way both are related. In the seminar, I presented my own research, which is a part of a collective research, but I also invited different students or colleagues to speak about their research. So I want to give you today first some examples. We had Agustin Kosowski, a former student of mine, who spoke about the geography of socialist Yugoslavia through the eyes of a Chilean literary figure and politician. We had also a PhD student of mine, Alexander Arroyo, who spoke about the experience of war through Serbian war diaries. We had also a former student of mine, Gabrielle Doyle, who presented a postdoctoral research at the beginning, but very interesting, on sovereignty and natural resources in the making of Istanbul suburbs. So a kind of urban history and also environmental history. We had also Jovana Papovic, a PhD student also, who is doing a very interesting research on the making of South Slavic space. So, no, she presented a part of a research which is on a group of youth during interwar Yugoslavia, the so-called. But for the seminar, she focused on the making of a South Slavic space through the development and activities of this so-called movement. And last but not least, we had also Sabine Rutar, who is so in the framework of her invitation at the EHESS, presented research, but it will be also very soon a book, I'm hoping, and so she presented the different parts of this book on labor in a port city, labor relations in a port city in the northern Adriatic region, and also a study on the a Slovenian mine under occupation during World War II. So this last topic, of course, had presented a convergence with my own research that I will present you now a bit in a way that I am doing during the year, during the seminar. So the indeed the seminar so is used to present and to discuss ongoing researches and in a way to teach through these researches. As Sabine said, this new research that I'm presenting this year is part of a collective project on the history of a mining site, which is located today in southern Albania, so not far from the Adriatic coast. Here you have the, I don't know if people that are following me now are see the mouse, but so you have no, well, okay, so where you have the red sign, so this is the site of the mine, and you have the Italian peninsula on the other side of this of the sea, of the Adriatic and the Ionian Sea. So the project on this mining deposit, on this mining site, is it's a long-term history project, because we are studying the history of the mine from the antiquity till, let's say, 1990, the end of the socialist regime in Albania. And it's also a multidisciplinary project, since we are archaeologists, historians of the different periods, anthropologists, and also specialists of the agro-pastoral system and geophysicists. One geophysicist. Here you have the site more precisely, a site with so the red, you have two red quasi-circles. One more to the north is, and along the a river, it's the site of the mine, of the bitumen mine. But you see that more largely you have a triangle. So it means that the site, in fact, is situated at the one peak of this triangle that is marked by two rivers in southern Albania today. And the second red circle is the port city of Vlora, today Vlora, which did not exist, in fact, during the ancient time. It was another port city that was important, more to the north, the ancient city of Apollonia. Just for you to have some marks concerning the geography. Why this the study of this mine is interesting concerning this problem of the spaces of experience and the experience of spaces. In fact, it's because of the nature of the object, the mine, for two reasons. First, the exploitation of a resource like bitumen implies a multi-dimensional environmental interaction. First, and second, there is a multiplicity of sources, and it means that the research will allow, because of that, a reflection about the space of experience and the experience of space. I want to refer, so it was in one of my first seminars about the theme, I referred to the text of Angelo Torre, which was published in the journal of the EHESS, Les Annales, in French, but also in English. A special turn in history, landscapes, visions, resources. And it's, I found this text very inspiring for me, And maybe it's not by chance, because in fact, Angelo Torre is reflecting in this paper very much about a study, the study of so collective study. That you see the reference at the bottom of the slide. A study by Ross Bazzaretti, Mark Pierce, and Charles Watkins, Ligurian landscapes, studies in archaeology, geography, and history in memory of Eduardo Grandi. So it means that the study is referring to is also a collective study engaging archaeologists, geographers, historians. And the book is not easily to be found, but at least there is this study of Angelo Torre who is referring to it. And if we can together read the passage of this studies, Angelo Torre is writing, in this new approach, resource is the key concept. One example is the discovery by historians of ecology of practices for the activation of plant resources. In this analytical perspective, the visual elements of the landscapes are the active elements in a selection made by the human groups that use them. In this sense, they are the object of practices, traces of which are found in historical cartography and legal documents. Local practices selectively activate resources, and it is the articulation of these activated resources that creates the definition of the landscape, allowing us to make substantive readings of text, including literary and narrative texts, and grasp the history of space in a primarily regressive direction, which valorizes the episodes that make up historical ecology. And also in another place in the paper is speaking about doing so promoting historical ethnography grounded in an analysis of the social practices of past societies undertaken at the topographical level. So because here in the case also of the mine, of this bitumen mine in Selenica, so I didn't pronounce the name, the very name of the site, which is Selenica. I think that we, as a pluridisciplinary group, we should or we could also try to make a kind of historical ethnography, looking at and trying to through the text that we have, so through the sources, try to restitute the social practices of the past societies and the impact on the paysage, on the landscape as it appear in our sources. I said that also the multiplicity of sources can be also important in order to understand this articulation between the space of experience and the experience of space. Indeed, when I am looking at my contribution to this project, which is, as an historian, I am supposed to work on the history of the site, let's say from 1800 to 1945, approximately. But here today I will concentrate on a smaller period, let's say the end of the 19th century, beginnings of the 20th century. So let's say the last decades of the Ottoman period. But already I gathered quite a lot of sources, and I could categorize them in here you see in three, so according to the producers of the sources. So the sources produced by the observers, the sources produced by the operators of the mine, and the sources operated by the administrators. It means that I had to go or to access to sources in Istanbul, in Tirana, the capital of Albania, in Selenica, the site of the mine, in Rome, in Paris, in Roubaix, because it's also the National French Archive concerning labor that are there, and also in the Burgundia. I will come back to this. So in the province, the French province. So today I want to briefly to come back to or to summarize three seances of my seminar I used in order to present three types of sources, and then today to go a bit deeper into a fourth category of sources in order to show you how the space of experience of each producer, to my mind, induce a different experience of the space related, of course, to related to the mine, and so give us different clues about the mine and its surrounding. So first, the observers. So in this category, the observers, I have put together diplomats, so consuls or vice consuls, travelers, and scholars. These categories are not totally separated. You have consuls who traveled and who were scholars, so it's not, they are not totally disjoint. I think it's, excuse me for my English, which is not perfect at all. Now, if we are thinking about the space or the spaces of experience of these people who so wrote about, so maybe I can go back. Yes, the observers, so they produced books, or articles, also reports in the case of the diplomats. We can also put the journalist into these categories, where there are some press articles. I don't know why it was written also in English and French. It's in order to learn French. It's okay. Yeah, I come back to the issue of the spaces of experience of these people. So you have, of course, their personal trajectories, which are important in the producing of their testimonies, of their studies. You have their testimonies will be also in a way related to the foreign policies of the countries they are representing, or they were sent by. You have the economic interest that they can represent. You have also the process of knowledge building and not bidding, that they are participating to. And this knowledge building in different disciplines. So, for example, geology, geography, archaeology, topography, botany, etc. So we have, for particularly concerning the mine of Selenica, people who are speaking about and giving information concerning the mine in the 19th century or beginning of the 20th century, and that are participating to this knowledge building process. I put also here, you see, tourism, because there is, especially among the British people, I think that the mine was included into a tourist guide in the 1850s or even 40s, maybe, an English tourist guide. So the development of tourism, of foreign tourism in the Ottoman Empire, is also a part of the space or spaces of experience of some of these observers. And so what is the result, how these spaces of experience are contributing to the experience of space of these observers when looking at the mine and referring and speaking or about the mine. So first, this experience of space will have a kind of a translation as will produce a knowledge, a very territorialized knowledge. And so this is a very a common process. There are studies concerning this process for all the Mediterranean world, also the Maghreb and the French expedition in Egypt, for example, so participated to this to build a knowledge of each territory of this. So and the resources, the mining resources, were a very important part of so the archaeological sites and the natural resources sites were very important elements of this territorialized knowledge that appeared, that was formed in the 19th century. And another very important general feature of this, of the way this space was experienced by these people was how space was linked to time, to so to the space was very much linked to the ancient past, and in fact even the cartography of the Ottoman Empire, for example, was seen through the ancient cartography. So that's why for example, the Selenica, the mine of Selenica, was always seen as related to the ancient Apollonia. I told you that the port city that was very important during the antiquity was Apollonia. So it was, and also it was the fact that the authors of the antiquity are mentioning a sanctuary linked to a fire, an eternal fire, so related to bitumen and to gas, and so it was also always evoked by people, by these observers that were mentioning the mine in Selenica. So you have this link to the past and to a future of economic development. So how such a resource could be used by the Westerners and produce revenues and produce incomes. So a kind of and even an idealized potential. So and in between, so the idealized past and the idealized future, you have generally very often a description of a poor, of a barbarian present, so present of the 19th century, with a primitive state of views and of exploitation, or if not, the remarks about the fact that the foreigners brought the new way of exploitation and then began to develop and to bring the modern ways of exploitation. So this is, and I think this is very important to understand then the way, so how more concretely then these observers experience space. So here I put, and we will go maybe a bit faster, clues concerning the different, so the let's say a supra-regional space, then the regional space, and the local space. So very often they experience the supra-regional space as the space of the operating space, and so imperial or foreign. So the fact that it was it belonged to how can I say, it belonged to the a property to the Sultan and the Ottoman Sultan, and the fact that from the 1870s onwards, it began a concession. It was given as a concession to foreigners. Another supranational dimension, of course, it's the export. It's related to the exports and the different usage of this bitumen. So here, a small parenthesis. You have to know that bitumen, it's so it's a mix of hydrocarbonates. And the qualities of this mixture of hydrocarbonates, it's the fact that it's adhesive, very adhesive, and that it is waterproof. So it means that from the antiquity on, it serves as to make the ships waterproofs, or the terrace, or the amphores. It was used also as an insecticide. It was used in the antiquity also to mummify. It was used. Now I'm sure I'm so. And then also in the 19th century, from the mid-19th century, a very important turn was the new use of bitumen in order to protect the sidewalks in European cities and in big cities in the world. So there is a development of the use of bitumen. So these observers at the regional level, a very important thing was the fact that in their description, they are speaking about the routes, the itineraries, and the routes, and especially the difficulties for people or even for animals. So it means also for the transportation of the bitumen, the difficulties even to go from the mine to the port city of Laura, and the seasonal variation. So it means because also they experience themselves, these observers, these itineraries and these difficulties. Now, at the local level, as I said, they speak about the sanctuary, they speak about the changes in technologies, but not very, of course, in a superficial ways. They speak, they see some people and they mention also the fact that there are foreign engineers, because they are, as also foreigners, their interlocutors are these French engineers, etc. They are also speaking about other local factors, but we have other sources that that will develop much more and give us much more information about that. And among these sources, there is a second corpus, very important, the sources to be found in the Ottoman archives. So the sources of the Ottoman, produced by the Ottoman authorities. These within the Ottoman sources, about the Ottoman archives, there are also different sub-corpuses. For example, the privy purse. The privy purse, la liste civile in French, Hazine-i Khasa in Turkish. It was the specific administration of the goods of the Sultan. Because, as I told you, the mine was on a territory which was which belonged to the Sultan. But you have also different ministries that also manage the some aspects of the mine, and also the Sublime Porte, so as the prime ministry, if you want. Here I will say that the space of experience of the producer of these documents, it's defined by the administrative interactions, and these administrative interactions were first the allocation of the concession, so defining the exploitation rights, the constraints that the foreign company had, etc. Then also the collection of taxes and fees concerning the production bitumen, but not only. And here you will see another aspects that we could not mention before with the sources of the observers, because the observers were because of their space of experiences, they were not induced to look at other things. So the fact that there was not only a mine, but also a farm that belonged also to the Sultan. In fact, the mine, so the deposits were on the territory of the mine, of the farm, excuse me. But the farm, it has also produced also wheat, corn, etc. There was also the peasants had also livestock, not only for the transportation of the bitumen, but but also for cultivating, for eating, etc. And also the taxes and fees were also imposed on the inhabitants. So the inhabitants, it means the miners, but also the peasants, etc. So it means that for the Ottoman authorities, there was not only a mine here, but to understand how the mine was functioning, it's of course very important to have also this. Some documents are also related to controls. So not only the collecting of tax, but also controls of the production, of the export. So it means that in a way, very often with other sources, we have the idea of a concession, a mine giving as a concession to a foreign company, and that's all. No, the Ottoman authorities, in fact, controlled also the. No, because I think we will see that after. So exports, uses, labor, etc. And very important, but except that it is only in some cases we have conflict resolution. So very often it's when there are conflicts, you have sources. Otherwise, and conflicts where people involved in the conflict ask the authorities to intervene, because of course there are conflicts also that were solved maybe without that. So maybe I will not detailed, but already with the things that I just presented, you can understand that the spaces that are appearing from this documentation is different, that are other interactions that are important. For example, if we take the supra-regional space, it is shaped by exports, and you see on the corner, on the top of the slide, a list of, well, it's very difficult to read because it's small, but it's a list of, during 1 year, all the ships that transported bitumen from Valona to different places, Marseille, New York, Hamburg, some places in Italy, Rouen even, and other places in Germany or in the Adriatic. It's very important. So of course there is this supra-regional space formed by the exports, but also the administration of the mine is comment on dit dessiné, is sketching also a supra-regional space, because you have you see that you have people from the administration who are coming to Selenica or in Selenica. You have Lora, you have Yanina, the center of the vilayet of the province, but you have also Istanbul and you have Paris, because we will see that after that the company which was exploiting the mine at its center in Paris from the 1890s on. Now, concerning the regional space, then we can see through because of the conflicts that there are tensions between local civil servants and mine managers. we can see also that we should not concentrate too much on Selenica, where there is the mine, of course, there. But another very important place is precisely the port city. And many operations are done even before the bitumen is put on the ships. Yeah, concerning the local space now, I want here just to stress two things maybe. The tensions between, because I told you that in this documentation the farm is appearing. So, and concretely more, the consequence is that we see that there is what I call a polyactivity. It means that some people are working at the same time as miners and as peasants in the agriculture, or as peasants who are dealing with livestock. And of course, it has consequences about the exploitation of the mine. There is also we see that there are lands that are non-cultivated, that there are lands where there are forests and where forests are destroyed, or so landscape is also changing, and this documentation gives us many clues about that. And we see that there are different interest groups. This is also very important because of this conflict. Interest groups also at the local level, and that can be related to each villages, because there are different villages in and around the site of the mine. Now, foreign operators. So I had the chance to find a private archive. So the private archive in the family of one of the French engineers who was there during the 1890s, Alfred Gounod, born in Burgundia, and an engineer of a civil engineer of the École des Mines. So here you have this what I'm calling his space of experience, a space of experience that is formed also by networks of engineers, but also of industrialists, of entrepreneurs, of bankers. You have also the foreign affairs, because in fact he was consular agent at the same time, not only director of the mine. And I spoke about the knowledge building, and he was in fact also a member of a French provincial learned society, and published some articles about the geology, about but I found a first clue about the existence of an unpublished monograph he wrote, 5 ans en Albanie, so 5 years in Albania. And so because of doing genealogy, I couldn't find this manuscript, in fact a tapuscript, because it was typeset. This, of course, it's a very interesting text. In fact, in this text is not speaking very much about the mind as such, but about the society. And it means that here we have a part of the is restituted a part of his experience of space he had during these 5 years in Selenica, and so first, and if in a brief way, I would say that his experience of space, it's a local village space around a mine and a farm. Here again, the farm is appearing, and he is applying transformation about this village and this farm. So he insists about, of course, it's subjective, very subjective. Then, which is very interesting, is the regional space. What he's saying, because he divides, in fact, the space. So, in a very common way for this period, for the Westerners coming to the Ottoman Empire or to Maghreb, so or to the Muslim world, dividing the space between margins that are cosmopolites and a savage interior. So this, in fact, you see how here we can see how there is this impact of the space of experience about this his experience of space. I forgot, in fact, to stress also the fact that he's criticizing very much the Turkish way of administrating also. But very, very, very interesting is the fact that he presents the region as polarized around chiefs, in fact, around the beys and the agas, and himself, in fact, is becoming also a power figure, competing with the local, with the regional beys and agas. Also very interesting is the fact that he's describing a landscape, a space which is little cultivated, and where the mobile property, it means the livestock is much more important. So he said that people there prefer to invest in livestock than in agriculture. Why? Because also it's easier to escape the taxes of the government. So it's also a space for the movement of herds and caravans. And then the supra-regional space, it's different because it appears as a space for expertise, for movement of goods, of people, and also, for example, for the skilled workers. So it means that here we see that workers are not only from local workers, and especially the skilled workers. And now the last part of my talk, it's again operators, but then not an engineer who has worked there, but the concessionaire, very difficult to say in English. Can you say it?
Concessionaries.
Concessionaire. Okay, thank you. So what through the Ottoman Bank archive. So in the Ottoman Bank, in fact, was La Banque Ottomane, was a French-British bank which became the Bank of the Ottoman Empire, but which was a foreign bank. And this bank began to invest. It was not only intervening in the financial aspect, but also in the investments, especially from the 1880s on. And that's why, to understand the fact that it became the concessionaire of the mine, and that a joint stock company was established in Paris in 1891, one has to understand. So here I would say that the space of experience is this first, this development of concessions in the Ottoman Empire to exploit all the natural resources, but also the railway lines, the ports also were given in concession, but also so the development. You have to understand the development of the Ottoman Bank, and also the development of products derived from bitumen. So I already explained that there was this turn with the use of bitumen for sidewalks, pavements in European cities, and we have also to understand the market of the bitumen, because there were other bitumen mines in the world, the most important being in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad, it's close to Venezuela, and at the time it was a British territory. And there is there a lake of bitumen. So now the archive of the Ottoman Bank are, so the Ottoman Bank had siège, headquarter.
Oh, okay.
Headquarter in Istanbul, but also in Paris and also in London, because and you have archives in Istanbul, and you have also archives maybe in London, I don't know, but also not in Paris, but in the Archives Nationales in France, but because it's a company, it's in the Roubaix, in the Archives du Travail. It's a private archive, but kept in Roubaix. And so recently, maybe 1 month ago, I went there and I found a big carton of these archives, which are so concerning this joint stock company. And so there are different kinds of documents kept in this carton. Mainly, there are these kind of documents. The report, the annual report presented to the actionaries of the John Stoight company. There are also other types of documents, for example, all the correspondence that was established for the establishment of the concession at the beginning in the 1880s, other type of reports, but mainly, and these annual reports are very important because and they cover from 1891 to let's say 1920, so 30 years of and so here we have so what is important, I think that here we have more the economic and technical aspects of the exploitation of the mine. So this is the and how economic and economy and techniques are related. We have also other topics because labor will also appear, but mainly and also the issue of market will be very important, of course, so related to economy. So I don't know if you can read. I think that we have not. I don't know what time is it.
4:15.
Quarter past 4. So so no, I will. No, but here just you see that we have different type of bitumen, so different, in fact, different type of products that are enumerated, and it's specified how why the production has increased or on the contrary is not is less important. The sales, the prices, the stocks, les stocks, oui on dit, the stocks, yeah, etc. Here it's another kind of the imbalance between active and passive. And again, another kind of report, but the same form, or about transport. You have also, because transport is important to understand also the. So, what this new corpus brings, it's very important because. Here we understand how the exploitation and the production was integrated into the market and into a global space, a French space and a global space. So why a French? It's because so the company was situated in France. The engineers were French. The chief engineer that was in Paris was French. So he had worked to develop the market, les débouchés, yes, the market of the débouchés of the mine, especially, not only, but especially in France, and not only that, but also because it was a kind of semi-colonial kind of exploitation. It means that when they decided to also treat the bitumen, they they built a factory in Marseille and not in the Ottoman Empire, not close to Selenica. And also very important was the alliance made with other French companies that were dealing also with bitumen and asphalt, in order to gain the adjudication of the pavement of Paris. So the majority of at that time, so at the end of around 1900, the majority of the sidewalks in Paris were asphalted with the bitumen of Selenica, because of this joint effort, and there was also an interaction with a German company in it that was operating in Abruzzo in Italy. So we have also other very important indication concerning the transport and also concerning the labor, the fact that the part of the miners were paid on a daily basis and were not so employers of the mine. The fact that there was several times a resistance from the worker because of the poor condition in which they worked, because they were not enough paid, and there were even strike. So here was the all the spaces that appear in these different kind of documentations. And well, I just concluding, but very quickly, in saying that yes, to my mind, and you will tell me if you have the same, if you were convinced or not, that in stressing and looking first to the way the sources are produced, especially in looking at the spaces of experience. Space, it's not only a geographic, it's also social, it's political and social. Space as social space. So in looking at these spaces of experience of the producers of the source, we are better equipped to understand the experience of the space that they have related to this very peculiar space, which is this mine. Thank you. Excuse me, I was too long, but it's always like this. So the goal is to show how are the seminars at the École des Hautes Études. So so it was an example.
So thank you very much. I wish there was an audience to applause, but we're just going to give it a silent moment. If the seminars at EHESS are always that kind of immersive, I'd really like to attend more of them than I have had the pleasure. And I also think that maybe by coincidence, but probably not, you gave us a really nice illustration of the word traveling, which you put as a keyword on the title of your new book, which to me is rather untranslatable in any language. because it means this camera movement, zooming in and out, and doing the best with the sources that you can, which is really excellent. So I would really like to invite whoever's out there, I can't even see how many people are online, to ask questions. Don't be shy and don't hesitate. Do it now, please. There is Gioacchino Ponzieri, who's here in the room with me. It's funny. Is that a question? Is that an invitation to ask? It is a question, which I can you read it yourself? Because it's hard for me.
Well, thank you for this very interesting talk. Just my question is, could you say if the observed subjects navigating the observed spaces had a role in the knowledge building process among the resources that you mentioned and studied? And in the same order, would you argue that there has been a debate over the objectification or subjectification of the observed local by the observers, like the ones you mentioned, workers, farmers, miners, managers, field servants, sailors, etc. If you would like to articulate about that, or later after other comments.
Would you like to answer? I think, or are there more questions? No.
No, but I think it's, thank you very much, because it's a very important question. And so, as you have seen here, I just wanted to show very, let's say, generally the things, but then in analyzing more specifically each of the corpus, yes, we have to, each space, as I said, is formed by an interaction. So the knowledge building process, for example, is of course the result of interactions of these observers, maybe before they are going to the mine, but also when they are there, and we can trace. For example, I'll give you an example. Henry Holland, one of the first observer, giving a very detailed description of the mine. He was there in 1820, so at the very beginning of the 19th century. He's saying the workers have told me that, have shown me les puits,
spices.
So not the gallery, but because at that time it was not horizontal, but so the well, excuse me, I don't.
Shaft, I think.
The shaft, yeah, maybe. Thank you. No, it's not maybe, it's true. It's that, the shaft. So we see, or when later on, when Baldacci, for example, an Italian botanist, is going there, he has we see that it is through the interaction of the Greek director, because there was always a so-called local director, in fact, an Ottoman director, who was generally a Greek. And I'm through different kind of sources. I have also information about the agency of this local director, because there was also conflict. So very often there were conflicts between the local director and the French engineer. So definitely, and as also I mentioned the fact that in I think that it is in 1899 or 1901 there was a strike, which is something that is not so. The strikes are known in the Ottoman Empire after 1908. In fact, here I have the mention of a strike. So definitely the observed are present, and sometimes they are they produce also. I have found also some documents. For example, this Greek director is writing also to the Ottoman authorities. So they are not totally absent. But your question is very central in try for not writing an history, not only an history of the an observed history, but I think that with the way I am suggesting, we have to maybe also to take sometimes the observers also as actors, because they are not only observing, they are also acting also.
Are there more questions out there? No, because I then have one that maybe connects to what Joaquino just asked. Because when I listened to you, I must admit that the distinction between the observers and the operators became rather blurred. And I think it's a good thing, because it kind of answers or confirms what you just said. Because you have, and at the same time, the observers, I think you quite nicely illustrated what they were talking about, but I still have difficulty, I have difficulty understanding why a place like Selenica would enter a British tourist guide in the mid-19th century. And who were these journalists, and were these observers actually talking about the mine, or were they talking about something else rather, which kind of feeds into your narrative? Because the operators, they should have been interested in the mine rather than anything of the other things that you were talking about. But when you talked, I think it became a bit blurred. So I think the question is twofold. Are they blurred? Are they both? And what was the tourism aspect, and what did the observers, like journalists, travelers, and all these people, what were they actually talking about? Because I can't imagine that they went to Selenica because of the mine. They went to Selenica because of Apollonia, which, however, is somewhere else. It's on the sea. So and in the middle there is a huge mountain and a river. so I was wondering about whether you could become a bit more concrete here.
Okay.
With an example.
Thank you. Maybe. Thank you very much. Yes. It is a fact that the mine was mentioned in a travel guide, in a tourist guide, because as a curiosity, first, and And it is a fact that also before being mentioned in a travel guide, all the travelers, but as I said, this category is to be discussed, the travelers, so from the beginning of the 19th century, because this region became important, especially for British travelers, but also French travelers, when it came to be included into the realm of Ali Pasha of Yanina, because of the presence of the British and French in all this region. So there was a political interest, but also a scientific interest in this, and an historical interest focused on the antiquity. So the idea was to rediscover the ancient sites, and and a kind of so tourism was focused on this. And Selenica, so it was supposed to be also the site of this sanctuary. And it was you have also in the region other ancient cities like Bulis. It's on the other side of the river. It's closer to Selenica than Apollonia. So, and there were itineraries, and very often and because at that time, so the first half of the 19th century, these foreigners were traveling with the guards, with the guides, and it was they were not traveling everywhere. They were following specific itineraries. That's why also in their relations, in their writings, the itineraries are very very important. Yeah, that's why but the mind was at the same time that there was this link to the antiquity, to archaeology, but it was also a curiosity, and I think also these travelers that generally had also political and scientific interest, were also interested in potential resources. So a mine, it's I don't know. I have the impression that. But you're right that the frontiers between, for example, between operators and observers is blurred also. Even I would say with the source that I found that I'm using for Alfred Gounod, so his manuscript. In a way, it has the form and the content of not a récit de voyage, because it's between souvenirs and a study on a country, because he's trying to explain. So he has geography, language, because he learned Albanian, transportation, communication, administration, etc. So it's rather analytical, except that he explains that he wants to explain what is Albania better than the others, because the others, in fact, they don't know Albania because they did not experience like him Albania. And for that, he specifies that he will give anecdotes. So in fact, it's the anecdotes we have very vivid and lively descriptions of his interactions again. And here, to come back to the first question, we have the others, the observed. I don't know if
I think it's so interesting that antiquity helps you, because it's obviously the blueprint of antiquity in the region that produces a host of sources in your era, which is really interesting. When you say, so was Gounod, you say he was consciously different from the others, or was he different because he spent 5 years or however time in Albania? Because one obvious question is, he was a foreign observer / operator. But so what was his gaze onto Albania like? I mean, was it the usual Orientalist gaze? Was he racist? Was he looking down upon people? Or was it knowledge transfer? Did he learn something back? I mean, how would you describe the source? And also the anecdotes, I mean, how does he tell them? Does he tell them, did he like Albania or did he hate it?
I think that it's very often it's ambivalent.
It's a fascinating source.
It's a fascinating source. I think I will edit if the families agree, I will edit this text, which is in a way it's very, so it is very at the same time very negative, especially concerning what is calling le facteur turc, the Turkish factor. So the fact that things function through bakshish, corruption, etc., etc., and and also that there is this power competition between the local chiefs, but he has other also negative remarks about the songs. For example, he considered the songs which are very, in fact, very nice, and it's the polyphony in this region, but he finds this very langweilig,
boring,
and but at the same time, we understand that he had a close connection, because he tried he learned Albanian. By the way, I learned today that another French engineer in Selenica in the 1880s also learned Albanian. So it means that there were close connections, and so it's very, very ambivalent. But again, we have to understand his discourse through the fact that, because I didn't mention this, I said that he was at the same time agent consulaire, so consular agent in Valona, and in fact he had troubles with his superiors. So the vice consul of in 1897, when there was the war between Greece and the Ottoman Empire, and he had to leave, in fact, because he had a conflict with the French diplomacy. So, in a way, his accent on "I know, I was there, and I was there not at the margin, but in the interior, so I know the interior." So it has something to do with either his relations to the French diplomacy or French specialist, or maybe also the French company. I don't know.
No questions from outside. I can't see it because there's a word thing now. Okay, so I'll just go on because I have several questions. If I didn't overhear it, I think the first time when you mentioned the railway was when you spoke about the Ottoman Bank and the concessionaires, how do you pronounce it in English, of the Ottoman Bank. Because you spoke about the port quite a bit, about export to the whole world, basically. But on the very first map that you showed, it was quite obvious Selenice is quite far from the port in terms of landscape, because there are mountains and there's a river to be crossed. So I was wondering whether you could talk a little bit more about this railway, which seems to have been a vital connection in order to make all this work. And the second part that you did mention, but also rather shortly, is you said quite nicely, you said labor will also appear in the project. And then you talked about being paid on a daily basis. And then you talked about strikes. And then you said that strikes in the Ottoman Empire, and I know the literature you're talking about, are known after 1908, so after the Young Turk Revolution, or whatever it's called. And so you discovering that there were strikes earlier might be quite important in terms of labor history. So I was wondering, what else is there in terms of labor history in your sources? How are you going to deal with these people who rarely write and are rarely kind of producers of sources? How are you going to deal with that part of your study?
I will first answer to the railway question, and then ask you to maybe to reformulate the second one. About the railway. In fact, so it's between Selenica, so the two red circles, there are approximately 18-19 kilometers. At that time, the roads, not the ways relating the two Selenica to Vlora were not along the rivers, but on the contrary, pass through the mountains, and then they had to cross the Shushitsa, so the river that is north-south on the here the screen.
And you mentioned animals.
And so the transportation was done with caravans of animals. In the winter, it was sometimes impossible to cross the river. So it means that the transportation was cut during several months of the year. So, but very early, the French engineers had the idea to use a railway, a Decauville railway. A Decauville, it's a light train, a light. It's a line. It's
it might be called narrow gauge, which is
it's
narrow.
a narrow. Yeah, exactly, exactly. But in the especially, so we see that especially in the corpus of the Ottoman Bank, that they in the 1890s they hesitate because they thought it would be too trop cher, trop
expensive,
too expensive as an investment because the production was not high enough.
Okay.
In fact.
Okay.
But in the several years later, they asked the Ottoman government to invest with the Ottoman Bank into such a railway. In fact, they use a railway inside the mine, but not between the port and the mine. And it was only during the First World War that, for military reasons, the Italian occupiers built such a railway, a Decauville one, but because the line front was along the Vjosa, so the other river, the let's say east-west river, and because the Austro-Hungarians were to the north, and so the mine the mine didn't function between 1916 and 2022, and it was only after the First World War that the railway served for the mine.
And what animals were
the
used?
Animals,
mules, I think.
Mules.
But I'm not sure. Yeah.
Voilà,
okay.
Mules and horses, but mules. And mules, it's very. For example, I learned that a mule can transport a maximum of 100 kilogram of material,
which is a lot.
Which is a lot, but which is the problem was the concurrence with the bitumen of Trinidad, which was in barrels of 200 kilos. So it was not possible to do the same, to condition the bitumen as the bitumen of Trinidad. So in the sources, yeah. So you see that the market, or the way things are processing here are seen by these people in Paris through the eyes, the problem of the processing in Trinidad, or but now the second labor. I am at the beginning of the exploitation of all this material, all this corpus, and I have also I'm working also on the period on the Italian period, because after the French, the Italian from the First World War on will exploit the mine. There are other things concerning the labor. For example, but maybe I have not always detailed answers or detailed datas, because, for example, one question is also the work of young people or of women. I have a photograph where we can see that women are working, maybe also transporting, not to the port, but on the site of the mine. So this is I know that young people were working because they were less paid. It was officially the young boys from 15 years were half paid than the men, for example.
But 15 is old compared to other places.
Okay, maybe so. Maybe it was not the children, but there are also things that are, so this polyactivity, I think it's also to be studied in the mind, but also, for example, I didn't mention the fact that the village, the very village of Selenica was a Vlach village, and so it means that these people are specialized in not only were also miners, but they were specialized even before in transportation, because they had caravans. And I know that some of them were also doing the transportation of salt, because if you see on the photo, you have a laguna on the left side, and salt was produced there, and is still produced there. And so these Vlach were transporting also salt in different regions. So it's only some example, but there are many questions to raise and to answer. But I think that we have to conclude this session. So
yes, there are many questions left open, but I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation off screen, and would like to thank all listeners for coming online and listening to the talk. And I would like to, before you go, I would like to draw your attention to tomorrow's talk, because as the president said at the beginning, there's going to be a talk every day, which sounds massive and is massive. And tomorrow at the same time, so 3 p.m. Paris time, there's going to be a talk about ethnicity and dynamics and historical dynamics. Let me translate that. Ethnicity and historical dynamics of integration in Southeast Asia by 3 people, actually, by Vanina Boutet and Yves from EHESS, Yves Goudineau and Catherine Scheer from EFEO, which I unfortunately do not know the long version of, but you will find out if you come back tomorrow, which I hope you do. Thanks a lot, and goodbye to everybody. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.